Nathi Mthethwa's wife sheds tears after Ramaphosa's speech, ANC in shock and mourns with her. It was a scene that no South African will forget. Soon the nation stood still as President Cyril Ramaphosa's solemn voice echoed through the packed hall, his words heavy with grief and reflection. The moment he spoke Nathi Mthethwa's name, the weight of the tragedy truly sank in. Cameras captured the heartbreaking image of Mthethwa's wife, tears streaming down her face, as she clutched a folded handkerchief, trembling from a grief that seemed impossible to contain. What had started as a routine memorial for a fallen public figure turned into an emotionally charged national moment. As Ramaphosa's speech unfolded, his tone shifted between sorrow, respect, and an unmistakable undercurrent of regret, a tone that seemed to acknowledge that Mthethwa's story was more than that of a man, but a reflection of a government under strain, a movement haunted by its own contradictions. Ramaphosa's voice cracked slightly as he said, "Comrade Nathi Mthethwa served this nation with dedication, often under immense pressure, carrying the vision of the ANC even when the burden felt too great. Today, we mourn not just his passing, but the cost of leadership that weighs heavily on all who serve." Those words pierced through the hall. Mthethwa's widow, dressed in black, covered her face as she wept openly, comforted by senior ANC members seated beside her, among them Guide Mantashe and Paul Moshatile, both visibly shaken. It was a moment of collective mourning, but also one of silent introspection for a party already reeling from internal division, corruption scandals, and public distrust. Insiders say the atmosphere inside the venue was spiritually heavy. Even some of Mthethwa's former political rivals lowered their heads in quiet remorse. There was a sense that everyone in that room realized how far things had gone, one ANC insider whispered afterward. For the first time in a long while, people felt the cost of loyalty, ambition, and silence. The ANC, a movement once known for unity and struggle, now stood exposed, fragile, emotional, and uncertain about its own future. For many, Mthethwa's passing symbolized the end of an era. His name had long been synonymous with both power and controversy, a loyal cadre who often found himself defending the indefensible. Yet, beneath the political battles, those close to him say he carried deep wounds of loyalty tested, of ideals compromised, of sacrifices few truly understood. As the president's speech concluded, the audience rose in a standing ovation, not out of celebration, but solidarity. The sound of soft sobbing could be heard across the hall. Members of the ANC Women's League approached Mthethwa's widow, embracing her in what became one of the most emotional scenes of the day. "He gave his life to this movement," one of them whispered. "And this movement will stand by you." Outside, crowds of supporters gathered, singing liberation songs that echoed with sorrow and pride. Banners that once bore slogans of political campaigns were now draped in black ribbons. Messages of condolences poured in from across the continent from former allies, opposition figures, and even global leaders who recognized Mthethwa's complex but significant role in South Africa's democratic history. Yet, behind the public mourning, whispers of deeper truths began to circulate. Some within the ANC suggested that Ramaphosa's emotional speech hinted at more than personal loss, perhaps an acknowledgement of internal turmoil, of fractures within the party that had long been ignored. Others saw it as an attempt to unify the movement in its darkest hour, to remind the public that despite their flaws, the ANC still carries the soul of the struggle. By the time the ceremony ended, and Mthethwa's widow was escorted out, the entire hall stood in silence, leaders, supporters, and critics alike. Her quiet tears had become the nation's tears, her pain the country's reflection. For a moment, the divisions that had torn South Africa's ruling party apart seemed to dissolve under the shared weight of mourning. But as the sun set and the crowds dispersed, one lingering question remained: would this grief unite the ANC or expose the cracks that even tragedy could no longer conceal? In the days to come, South Africa would continue to talk about that moment, about Ramaphosa's trembling voice, about the tears of Mthethwa's wife, and about the ANC that stood at a crossroads, torn between remembrance and reckoning.